This is Polish Peter, and welcome to episode 78 of Immigrant Masters Unite. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another amazing episode of Immigrant Masters Unite, where immigrants unite and transform lives. That's right. This podcast is all about helping you transform your life, your business, and the world around you. And I'm your host, Polish Peter. Now, you may or may not be an immigrant. However, on this particular episode, in this particular podcast, I interview successful immigrant entrepreneurs and business owners who literally sometimes started from nothing and created a powerful, amazing financial freedom for themselves in their life. Now, today, on this particular episode, I have a gentleman named Diego Corzo. He's originally from Peru, and this guy has an amazing story. I cannot wait for you guys to hear this particular story. So Diego is the DACA recipient. He's been the fourth featured entrepreneurs and TEDx speaker from Austin, Texas, and he came to U.S. at the age of 9. And after college, he started working in corporate America and soon discovered that he was destined for more and pursued a career in real estate. Now, today, Diego is a realtor for Keller Williams in Austin, Texas, and he currently owns 15 rental properties, and he is very well on financial freedom, and he has an amazing story they share with you. So I cannot wait for you to jump on this particular episode and listen to a story because we have some amazing things that we shared here. So without further ado, here is Diego Corzo from Peru. So hey, Diego, thank you so much for being on the podcast, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Peter. I really appreciate this opportunity.
You're welcome, man. So tell us a little bit about your story of how you actually ended up here in the States.
Yeah. So I came to the United States when I was 9 years old. I was born in Lima, Peru. And when I was 9 years old, my parents told me, I remember I was in third grade, and they told me, Diego, we are thinking about going to the States, because at that point, my dad couldn't find a job. He had tried opening a restaurant in Peru, but it failed. By that time, my mom's car got stolen that year in 1999. Yeah, it was just bad. So my parents decided to move to the States with my brother and I. I was 9 years old. My brother was 3. We came here with a tourist visa. And after 6 months, we overstayed it and we became undocumented from that perspective. And now I am what Congress calls a dreamer. I am part of the DACA program now as an adult. But growing up in Florida, learning a new language and just going from being really good in school and all of that stuff, right? Like in Spanish, to then coming here and learning a new language, not just for me, but for my parents, and seeing a lot of their hard work. And we came here and started from scratch. We moved here into my aunt's house. We lived in one of the rooms in her house, slept in a bunk bed with them for like 3-4 months. And then my parents, we started our journey on the American dream.
All right, very cool, man. That's a cool story, man. And I hear that a lot from other immigrants, like immigrating in here. It's very similar. So give me a perspective of a 9-year-old in Florida. You didn't speak any English, right? What was that like?
It was a little bit tough because of the fact that even though we were in Miami, in which there's a lot of Latinos, I remember the first day in school, I would go to everybody because they looked Latino too. They looked Hispanic. And I would be like, ¿Hablas español? Like, do you speak Spanish? And everybody said no. And then 3 days later, we have Spanish class and everybody spoke Spanish. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, these kids just didn't want to help me or welcome me or anything like that. But it was definitely tough in the beginning because my teacher, she didn't speak any Spanish. And so I was in ESOL. I did really good in the math classes, but when it got to learn English, I was always asking questions. So I sort of would get like in trouble because the teachers thought that I was just chatting. And it was that I didn't understand. But it was definitely a challenge too in leaving my family. And I was old enough to understand that we were leaving Peru and we didn't know when we were going to come back. But as I was the older brother, I was the oldest of like the grandchildren and all of that stuff. So I put a lot of my emphasis into school. That's for sure.
Yeah. So that's a good point that you did that, right? I mean, I can relate to some of your story that you're saying because like when I came when I was 14, for the first 6 or 8 months, I would just sit in that class. And I don't know if this was your experience, but I would literally wait for them to call my name and I would just say, here. And one of my friends just told me, just say here. I didn't know what that meant, but just say here so they know that you're in class, right? So that's an interesting first. So then you obviously came out. Did you go to college or what happened next?
Yeah. So as part of my story, as I was going through school, I would say that as an immigrant, especially going through middle school, high school, I did everything that my parents were telling me. It's like, Diego, you can achieve the American dream. We came here so that you guys can have a great future. And so I was trying to do everything that my friends were doing. But I did face a few obstacles. One of them, and even though, to give you an example, like I knew that we were quote unquote like undocumented and that's part of my story, right? But it didn't really hit me until I turned 15 years old when I went to the DMV to get my driver's license. And every time that I hear other dreamers, other people that are my age share their story, they always say, hey, I realized that what it really meant when I was 15 years old and I went to the DMV, right? Because I went like all my friends and then they said, Diego, we're just missing some documents that we can, so that you can get your driver's license. And when I go to my mom, she's like, Diego, we do not have that. So that's when I knew that my life was going to be a little bit different than my friends. I was like, okay, even though that's a challenge, I will be okay. I found rides to school and all of that stuff with like the bus, my friends. I was very focused in my schooling and I graduated third in my high school class. I got into Florida State University. And as I was applying to scholarships, grants, student loans, and all of that stuff, I also found out at the age of 18 that I couldn't qualify for any of that because they required me to have a green card or to show that I was American. Right. So I was like, okay, that's another obstacle that I had. And then I had enough money either saved and also I was able to get some scholarships and I did go to Florida State University. I went there knowing that I had enough to pay for one semester. And as I was going there, I began volunteering to do websites because my major was information technology and management information systems. So I volunteered for a nonprofit, did their websites for free. And then at the end of the 6 months, they're like, Diego, we love what you're doing. You've done more. There was some seniors doing a year, so we want to hire you. I'm like, great. This is going to be my opportunity to pay for college. And I go through the application process and they said, Diego, everything is looking good. We just need your work permit. So I'm like, okay. I go to my mom and she says, we do not have that. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm 19 years old. I cannot drive. I cannot work. I can't get student loans. What the heck? Like all of these obstacles, right? And it was a little bit tough. And I have to say, like, one of the things that I did do, and this is something that I remember when we came to the States, my dad told me that this is the land of opportunity, but it is up to us to find it. It is up to us to find it. So I just knew that seeing the work ethic and the sacrifice that my parents went through, I knew that I was going to be successful no matter what. It was just good, but it was going to take a little bit more hard work than my friends. I just knew that. So it was sort of like, maybe I already know that it's going to get harder, but I have in my why is strong enough that I could do it. So I found out that I couldn't work. I created an LLC with my friend and I began doing websites for small businesses. I found out that they couldn't pay Diego, but they could pay an LLC. So I began working as a contractor and I had to get creative, right? So, I mean, I lived in Florida State University. There were times where I had appointments, I had meetings, and my bike, this was before Uber, before Lyft, before all of that. So my bike was my only mode of transportation. So I would literally put a suit and a towel in my backpack, ride my bike 4 or 5 miles, sweat like crazy, park my bike in the back of the building, dry off, and then go to the front of the building to meet with a client, do everything, and then go back to the building, change into my sweaty gym clothes and ride my bike back home. And, but that's the reason why, how I was able to pay for college. And at the end of the day, when in 2012, that was when the Obama administration passes the DACA program. And that was right when I was graduating. And the DACA program allows dreamers, people like me who came under the age of 16 at the time, to be able to get a driver's license and a work permit. And that was right as I was graduating. So it was like perfect timing.
Yeah.
And I began applying for jobs and I got a job with GM, the car company. And they said, Diego, you have so much work experience here. And they were like, we're going to hire you. Do you want to go to Detroit or Austin? And I told them, I do not like the snow. I do not like the cold. So I moved to Austin. And
you didn't go with Detroit? Yeah. Come on. By the way, I live about 30 minutes north of Detroit. So
yes, I do know that. I read your bio on that and I was like, oh man, that's funny. So I moved to Austin and so I graduated in 2012 with 2 bachelor's degrees in less than 4 years and with zero student debt. And I graduated in the top 1% of FSU. And I just remember being able to graduate right when the DACA program was starting. I felt like I felt like a lot of my work was sort of like, okay, now is when I can really start my career, everything that I wanted to do. And so I moved to Austin. But in between that time in college, I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. And that book taught me that there's 2 ways for people to make money. You can either trade your time for money or make your money work for you. So I knew that even though I was going to make a career as a software developer for GM, I was just starting out. I knew that I was going to live below my means and invest into real estate because I wanted to build passive income and make my money work for me that way. So I knew that. And I had set a goal to buy 10 properties by the age of 35. But I also hit a lot more obstacles because
Yeah, I mean, I want to get into that because I think obstacles are a big part of your life. And I think obstacles are a big part of everybody's life, right? That's how you handle them. So I want to get into that. But before I can jump into that, I want to ask a quick question because you're part of the Dreamers program, right? Which comes back to the whole American dream kind of a thing. And you mentioned at the beginning, living that American dream. Just curious, growing up, what was your definition of American dream? Where is that?
The definition of the American dream has, for me, it has changed a lot.
Yeah, what was it back then when you were growing up?
Back then, when I was growing up, it was like more on the experiences, like more like having a boat, having a big house, having stuff as a kid. And like comparing myself with my friends and seeing on TV, especially, just like having this grandiose life. But now I've sort of like, I've seen that the American dream is sort of like achieving like being on the pursuit of what you want to achieve, no matter what it is, despite the obstacles that one can have.
I love
feel
that,
like,
man.
yeah, yes. I feel like that is it.
I love that. I think that's a great definition of that, because I mean, if you really think about it, what else are we here for on this earth, right? I mean, pursuing that, what we truly want in life. And I think you're on that way to do that. So let's talk about the next thing is the obstacles, because growing up, you've experienced a lot of obstacles. I mean, look at the driver's license, then, you know, I'm graduating, trying to get a job. That was an obstacle. Then went GM and all that kind of stuff, graduating from college. So it's obstacle. I would assume that after you graduated from college, these obstacles didn't end, right?
It did not end.
I mean, you're going after real estate. There's a whole bunch of obstacles that show up in that area as well, right? Because I have a lot of students that deal with that. So talk to me about, one, what is your definition of an obstacle, right? Because I think that's important. And two, how you handle that.
Yeah, the definition of an obstacle for me is just a stop, but there's other ways to do it. Like for me, it's just a stop in the pursuit of the American dream, let's say, but there's so many different ways. There's so many different routes. There are routes, like there's an easy route. And unfortunately, in the situation that I'm in with being a DACA, being a dreamer, I know that my journey is going to be just a little bit harder. I'm already like aware of that. So I just have to get resourceful, but know that if I look hard enough, if I work hard enough, there's always a way. I feel like I'm a big believer that if the door of opportunity is closed, I go through the window. That's my thing. Like I find out a way, right? And a lot of people, like with those obstacles, sure, some people would get themselves and be like, oh, another obstacle. Okay, I'm just going to quit. But I feel like an obstacle or a challenge is just, it depends a lot on the questions that people ask themselves. And this is something that I've learned from Tony Robbins. I have to say, like if you ask yourself, why is this happening to me? You take the victim mentality. But if you switch it around and you ask yourself, why is this happening for me? You can take the empowerment mentality, and instead of blaming others for your situation, you actually get to look for solutions, because now your brain is expanded. Now you're not blaming people and saying, oh, I'm a victim. Now it's like, okay, this door is closed. What is another way to still achieve my goal?
I love that. I think, I mean, I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan. I mean, he's a mentor of mine. So, I mean, I just love, what you said about it, because he talks about that. And that is a powerful mindset shift, because literally in that moment, you just shift how you ask the question, how you look at it, right? And that alone can have a significant impact on your life. So give me an example of situations that an obstacle came up for you, right? And you've used that to be able to get a different result.
Yeah, I mean, an example would have been where I could have easily given up would have been in me pursuing. So for me to buy my first house, as like I had probably 10 lenders told me, no, you cannot do this because we don't know what DACA is. You have no credit bill. You have no nothing. Like, yeah. So I remember that I went back to be like, okay, there has to be another way, right? So in having those obstacles, you have to get resourceful. You definitely have to get resourceful and figure out that there's another way. So I had to, for example, because I had already the knowledge of potentially like investing in real estate and finding the right deal, I convinced two of my friends to get on a loan so that I could, like, we created an LLC between the three of us And then the two of them will be on title, will be on the loan, but I was able to give them some money, quote unquote, under the table to be able to get that property and for me to get started. Another thing that I had to do when I graduated college, my paper for my DACA, my work permit, it was supposed to take 3 months to come. And I applied in September. By December, I was graduating. I should have gotten my papers. I was starting my job at GM January 8th of 2013. And I had no papers. They hadn't come yet. Like, there's nothing. And I decided, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. I'm going to move to Austin and I'm going to figure out a way. I still didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have a work permit, but my friend was driving to Colorado. So I'm like, dude, can you stop? Like, can you help me move to Austin? And he said, yes. In that it took us 8 days to get to Denver, whatever. But in those 8 days that I did the whole road trip, I had to figure out what I was going to do. And I managed to convince the top managers at General Motors to hire me as my company so that I could start working as a contractor while my paperwork from immigration was coming in.
So they hired the LLC?
They hired my LLC and I was getting paid. I was getting paid as a contractor with experience because they couldn't just give a college new hire salary. Yeah. So they loved me. They saw that I could give value, right? But that's all about like, I'm a big believer, like we get paid what we bring to the value in the marketplace, right? This is a quote from Jim Rohn. And so I felt like I did have that experience. Was able to provide that value. And that's why GM was like, okay, we're gonna hire your company. And then once you get it, then you can come back as an employee. And, man, I mean, at that point, imagine I come to Austin, no work, no job. I'm renting a room from somebody. And our first stop was Walmart so that I could buy a bike. So because that was my only mode of transportation here in Austin. Yeah. So I bought a bike and I was riding to GM often, like every single day. And I remember some of my managers would say, hey, Diego, you want to take out the Corvette for a ride? You want to take out a Camaro? And my excuse was always, I have a very important meeting. I'll catch up with you later.
Oh, yeah.
Because I couldn't do
license.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you, man.
I couldn't do it. Right.
Wow.
But I have to tell you what, one of the happiest, whenever I did get my papers, I was the happiest person at the DMV.
I'm sure you have, man. You've been jumping up and down.
Yeah. Those 3 hours that I was waiting while everybody was pissed and mad, I was the happiest person. And that's why I always say perspective matters.
Perspective. Yep.
Perspective matters. And you have to be grateful with what you have. And something that I learned from Hal Elrod that it always stuck with me. And he said, you have to be happy with the life that you have as you build the life of your dreams.
I love that.
And I was like, when I heard that, I was like, holy crap. So, because happiness is a choice, no matter what obstacles we have, right? I feel like no matter what obstacles, we have to be happy with the life that we have as we are achieving, as we're pursuing the life of our dreams. And it is going to be a challenge. And I have to tell you, the difference that helped me achieve that instead of creating excuses and giving up is basically the having a strong why. And the strong why for me is my parents, right? They came here, learned a new language. My mom was like chief operations officer at a local bank. But she let that go so that we as a family could achieve much better here. And she was working at a gas station from like midnight to 7 a.m., like in the cold and all this other stuff. And I just remember like everything that they went through, like I can totally do it. Those small sacrifices, me riding a bike for 4 miles in the heat. My mom was working midnight to 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 7 days a week. My dad didn't have a day off for years. So it's sort of like that's those sacrifices that I'm like, that they are my why. And no matter what, there will be a solution for it.
Right. I love that because, I mean, you mentioned there's so many gold nuggets that you mentioned just in one conversation. We talked about the obstacles, like looking and like, what's the other way? How else can I do it? Right. if the door is closed, I'll go through the window, right? Or go through the chimney or take off the roof or whatever to get into the house, right? And we talked about perspective. I think it's a huge part of living the life to be successful here, because one man's, bad luck could be another man's, the way they look at it could be some great, opportunity in a way, right? Look at it, I totally get the whole thing about being at the DMV. People are, angry, pissed, they hate it. And you're the guy jumping up and down, celebrating. And they're like, what's up with that guy, right? But they don't know the story behind that. And the other thing is, being driven, have that personal why that drives you to get to the next level. And I think that's an extremely important thing. And I think you have a really powerful why because that keeps you going. So, side note, I'm just curious, man, before we continue the conversation, any idea how many miles you've made on that bicycle?
Dude, somebody asked me that, but I don't know. It was a lot. It was a lot between Florida to General Motors and everything. But I just had to do what I had to do.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a great point, right? Sometimes you got to do what you have to do. And looking at the perspective that you had, I think it was, did you do anything else while you're riding on the bicycles, or you listen to books or anything like that? I'm just curious.
Listening to books, listening to podcasts. Like, it took me 30 or 40 days between the day that I moved to Austin to me starting as a contractor. This is how long it took. And so I moved to Austin, and for those 30 days or 35 days, I was like, what the heck am I going to do? Like, I'm not going to go ride my bike to places because I live in North Austin and there's nothing really close other than riding my bike. And I had no money because I wasn't working. I had to ask my dad for rent money for 2 months. And during those 30 days, I did ask myself, how can I be as productive as possible? So I read books. This was before Audible, I think. But I read books. I read Think and Grow Rich. I read How to Win Friends and Influence People. I read The Millionaire Next Door. And that book, I was like, holy crap, The Richest Man in Babylon. And so that allowed me to build a base. That allowed me to build a base, which it became it's like a blessing in disguise, sort of, because of course, I worked my butt off to graduate college and all of that stuff without any student debt and any student loans, while my friends that we ended up in the same job and they were $60,000, $80,000 in student debt. And then now they're stuck, right? So my sacrifice of me still going and taking six courses a semester in college while still figuring out working and all that stuff, it was a blessing in disguise. Yeah.
I love that, man. I think that's a lot of it has to do, because one thing I'm sensing from you as I'm talking to you here, man, is you have a strong belief within yourself about yourself, right? I think that's an important. You want to speak about that a little bit? Because I think that's a lot of times people, when they have a hard time winning in life or succeeding, whatever, they don't really believe about themselves that well. Talk about that.
Yeah, I have to say it got to the point where I had to own that it was, and I'm going to share a little bit more about it too, but it had to be more from the perspective, I have to own and be happy with what I have and know that my goals is to do as much as possible with the cards that I am dealt.
Yep.
Right. And I feel like if you come from that perspective, if you can do as much as possible with the cards that you're dealt, you're always going to be, I feel like, in that hustle mode of in trying to reach your potential. And I feel like that is what has helped me. But I wasn't always like that in school. So you may not see it or hear it, or you might hear in the future, but I've had a speech impediment since I was 5 years old. I stutter, and it wasn't I've been stuttering since I was 5 years old. But I knew that I had to share my story. something happened in 2017 and I'll get to that. But I just knew that I had to share my story with other people and I had to forget about my fear of if I stutter, I stutter. I used to skip classes. I used to skip like presentations. I tried to convince some teachers in high school so that I didn't have to give a presentation if I could write it all out, like just do it like that or just do it in front of her after school. But because of that speech impediment, I just took some classes and I had to go from the perspective of like, whatever, they're not like, I'm going to speak my truth and I'm going to speak from my heart. And so going from that scared kid, skipping classes and stuttering, because learning two languages is hard enough. Imagine like you begin to have a speech impediment and you stutter in Spanish, you stutter in English, and you're like, what the heck is going on? I can't even talk and I'm trying to learn something. But I went from having that speech impediment and being scared to giving a TEDx talk. And the only way that I could give a TEDx talk was to memorize those words. Like my TEDx talk is like 13 minutes. I memorized everything word for word because I've learned about myself that if I memorize a speech, I'm not thinking about what I have to say next. I just do it. So that causes me to not stutter. And I was like, okay, well, if I have to memorize 13 minutes of something, I will do it. Right. It goes back to that mentality. Like, is the goal of what I want to do of sharing my story and inspiring other people, is that stronger than the fear that I have of stuttering in that when you're on stage, having 300 people look at you for 13 minutes, like I was afraid, I was shaking. But because of the fact that I knew that I had memorized it, I knew that I was going to be okay. And if I stuttered at the end of the day, that's me. I can't do anything about it. But having that extra, again, goes back to, I just had to go the extra mile to achieve what I want to achieve. And for me, was memorizing those 13 minutes word for word. And
How did you memorize this particular podcast interview?
Well, I've said a few things over and over. No, but at the end of the day, because we're having a conversation, I'm pretty like, we're just having a conversation and it makes it easier. But
perception,
at the end of the day, but if I stutter, I stutter at the end of the day.
But listen, I love that because you own it, right? And I think you have to own it. I mean, I'm Polish. I own it, right? Yeah. And however, if you ask about any there's plenty of Polish jokes out there, right? And most of them are not very flattering, but if you own it, you start actually taking power within yourself to be able to accomplish it. You agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. And I have to agree that like there comes to the fear may always be there, but the courage needs to be stronger than the fear in order for us to achieve what we want to achieve. Right. I have to say, I'll share something because I'm very transparent, because I feel like being transparent allows me to help other people, give them a position like, if Diego can do it, why can't I? Right. And because I just turned 30. So everything, like I own 15 properties. I became financially independent at age 26. And like I've done a lot of stuff, but regardless of that, I feel like in me sharing my story allows people of like those obstacles, allows people to be like, holy crap, if Diego can do it, why can I? Exactly. But it took a while for me to basically come out and say, hey, I am a dreamer. I am undocumented. It wasn't until, and not to get more on what's going on with politics, but in 2017, the Trump administration decided to take the DACA program away, or at least try to. And that's when I came out as, I shared my story for the first time in social media, ever. No, not many people knew that I had DACA. I always hid it, like with my friends in high school, my friends in college. But I shared the taxes that I paid as a 26-year-old of over $28,000. And I shared what caused me to share that was something that Jeff Sessions said. He said that DACA recipients deny jobs of hundreds of thousands of Americans by allowing those jobs to go to illegal aliens. And I was like, you know what? You can say that we had denied jobs to go to Americans, but we are in a capitalistic society. We in the United States, we get paid by the value that we bring to the marketplace. I earned those jobs. I earned those jobs with the nonprofits. I was the one who rode the bike to meet with those people to help them make their website. I was the one that GM hired because of the potential that they saw in me. They just didn't give me that job. I earned them, right? So I share that story and how by the age of 26, I already own 8 properties, picture of my taxes, that I'm paying taxes, all of that stuff. And that post went viral. And I remember calling my mom and I was like, I am afraid to publish this because I don't know what can come up from it. I'm sharing basically on social media that I'm a dreamer and all of that stuff. But I told her, I just have to do it. And I posted it on a Tuesday. By that weekend, my story Fox News Austin reached out. I shared my story there on Forbes, CNN Money, entrepreneur.com. And then I get a call from an organization led by Bill Gates, an organization that's led by Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, the CEO of Dropbox, and a few other CEOs in the tech industry. And they asked me to see if I wanted to go to Washington, D.C. to share my story with congressmen. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've learned about that organization years ago. And I was like, man, one day I want to be featured in that story, whatever. And then I got that call and I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. So I went to DC. I met with congressmen. I participated in a press conference. And this I had microphones and cameras all over me. And I'm like, holy crap. I'm there. I never told them that I stutter. I never told them all these other ones, right? I was there for a purpose. And I feel like when you're doing your purpose in life, there's nothing that can stop you. And that's why I highly believe that as we immigrants, right? We are here to achieve our own version of the American dream, whatever that is, right? But at the end of the day, it's sort of for me, by me sharing my story, my hopes is that it inspires other people, other immigrants, and especially other millennials that have opportunities that I didn't have. Even now, there's some stuff that I still can't do or whatever, but it doesn't stop me from achieving what I want to achieve. And so from that post, that caused a lot of people to reach out to me, and it has allowed me to help a lot of people, from help dreamers, teach them how they can buy homes, connect them with lenders, with realtors, teach other people, other millennials how to achieve financial freedom, how to take control of their money. And it has been an incredible experience. And when I shared that was in September 6, 2017. So exactly 3 years ago.
Wow. What a story. Yeah. That's incredible, man. That's awesome. One thing as I was listening to you just talk that popped up from my head is the fact that the purpose, right? And you shared a little bit about it. Is that your purpose in life, or what's your purpose?
Yeah, I wrote it down after going through a lot of Tony Robbins stuff and everything. I want to help people, especially millennials and Latinos, the millennials, let's say, help them achieve their true potential and financial independence. Because I feel like it's totally achievable. I feel like there's so much opportunities in the States that if that's what they want, they can do it.
I love that, man. I think you're totally going to get it too, man. The way you're speaking, your disposition, how you view life and your mindset, I think you're going to totally rock this out, man. So kudos to you, man. So listen, I want to make sure that I respect your time. I mean, I could literally talk to you for hours, I think, on here because I got a great story and there's a lot of cool things that you could probably unpack here. I want to respect your time and the listeners' time. So my first question, I want to go into my Polish Peter's final round, is what are you reading right now, or what's the one book that you would recommend?
The one book that I'm reading right now is Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz.
Yes, that's a great book. It's an old one, but it's powerful
it is an old
still
one.
to this day. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the book that also, so Tony Robbins, I've been to UPW, I've been to Day with Destiny, but I feel like he literally has built so much of his events from that book. It's insane. That book is so good. I highly recommend people to read it. I'm going to reread it again. And this time I'm going to read it with Audible and reading that book.
Yep. I love that, man. There's a great book. Yeah, that's a great recommendation. Okay, next question. You shared a lot on this particular podcast about the mindset and obstacles and purpose and, looking up to your parents and what they've sacrificed and having the why. And if you were to tie up this whole entire episode to one thing, what's the one thing you would advise our immigrant listeners?
Our immigrant listeners, I would say to never forget about that immigrant hustle, because I feel like that is our unfair advantage. I feel like we already know zero. Like we already started from zero, and we can only go up. And if we have to come down for whatever reason, we've already been there. We know what's like. We just have to move forward.
I love that. I think that's a great piece of advice. Yeah, hustle. One thing about the hustle is about being intentional when you hustle, because you can hustle all over the place and not go anywhere. So I think I think I agree. Okay. Next question. One thing that you would want to share about the old country, Peru. Maybe it's a food or custom or saying, anything like that we wouldn't normally know about.
Yeah. Well, one thing about Peru is that Peru has won as the best cuisine for 7 years in a row. So wherever you are, if you never tried Peruvian food, go to a Peruvian restaurant. The food is amazing.
Any particular kind of food I should get?
If you like fish, the ceviche is delicious.
Ceviche?
Peruvian ceviche.
Okay, all right.
It's raw. Awesome. It's raw fish that is cooked in lime juice. So good. It's raw fish.
It's still raw when it comes out? So
it's chemically cooked. It's chemically cooked in lime juice. You can say that.
All right. Awesome. Very cool. I love it. All right, I'm going to have to try that out, man. Maybe if I'm in Austin, maybe we can grab a bite or something.
Yeah.
All right. Next question that I have for you. I believe that every single person in the world has a superpower. What's yours?
Resourcefulness.
The whole obstacles, how do you get around those, being resourceful?
Yeah, resourcefulness. And I would say that.
Okay. Awesome. Very cool, man. One last question I have for you. If somebody want to get in touch with you, how could they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can definitely send me an email to info@diegocorso.com. I am a realtor in Austin. So something that I didn't share was that in 2015, I left my full-time job as a software developer. And now I'm full-time in real estate as an investor and as a realtor. And so that's what I do full-time. But for anybody that does want to get to know a bit more about my journey and stuff, they can go to the website Rat Race to FI, which stands for Financial Independence, ratrace2fi.com. And they can also find me on Instagram as Real Diego Corzo.
All right. Awesome. And if they're looking for a house in Austin, Texas, they reach out to you.
Or anywhere. Yeah, I can definitely help them in starting their investing journey.
All right, man. So thank you so much, Diego. Listen, I think it was a great episode. I love learning about you and finding out more about your story. And I think what you shared is going to help a lot of people on this particular episode because of, we deal with obstacles all the time. We deal with life all the time. And I think it's how you handle, how you respond. That's what matters. And I think one last thing that I would share about this is that what Tony says, when you mention it, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. When you start looking from that perspective, life alters. Really, it does. So thank you for being on here. I appreciate you, man, and I appreciate the listeners. Don't forget to leave a review on iTunes and come back to mastersunite.com. If you found this interview somewhere out on the internet, we're on Alexa now. So you can go and literally ask Alexa to listen to this episode. And yeah, if you have anybody that you know that would be a great podcast interviewing, send them my way. Go to mastersunite.com and reach out to me there. I always answer people, and we'll go from there. All right, Diego, thank you so much, man. And I'm looking forward to finding more about you.
My pleasure, Peter. Thank you.
All right, bye.